Have you ever had a moment where you suddenly just follow somebody without even knowing why? So there's this moment where somebody goes from kind of just a guy to, I think I should probably follow this person. And I think that's something that everybody has felt. It's almost kind of like an unspoken shift in attention and our ability to have compliance, our propensity to have compliance and suggestibility to another person. It's an authority switch that's built into our unconscious mammalian mind that's kind of been built over thousands of years in order to survive and in order to have respect for authority figures in kind of tribal atmospheres. And today, what I want to talk about is how you can shift that in other people, how you can create that shift and that trigger in order to have people just follow you without even knowing why. And really what this all comes back to is being a true reflection of your authority and your confidence. So to do this, I think what might be fun is let's talk about a little story. Now, the NCI system teaches this better than anything I've ever seen. You'll hear a lot of people say stuff like, oh, now I finally have a way to understand something that I've already done before. And I think that's true, but I think having an understanding of why something works is paramount if we want to be able to actually create that outcome in other people. I used to be a roofer, for anyone who doesn't know. And this one time we were working on a roof. It was incredibly hot. Just imagine the hottest day you've ever had times two. When you're on a roof, the thermal reflection is out of this world. So we're on a roof. It's the middle of July and the job's not going perfectly well. People are kind of upset. Guys are yelling at each other, being a little bit short with each other. And it's creating this atmosphere of improductivity, right? So good productivity is kind of just starting to not happen. People are shutting down and they're not being as efficient as they could be because the temperature and the tempers are flaring up. So at about this time, our foreman walks up, who is this guy who had roofed since he was just a little kid, and he didn't speak many words of English. And he was just this pretty kind of grizzled type of dude. But he kind of comes up and he calmly gives just two simple, straightforward directives to everyone. And finally, the whole crew goes quiet and just starts following what he said to do. Now, it would be easy to say, oh, well, he was the guy in charge, and that's why people chose to follow him. But if you've ever been in a group of people who have an appointed leader before, then I'm sure you have at some point experienced that person giving orders or directives that while people might follow, they might be deferent to that following, or they might be resistant to following the order. They might be kind of speaking under their breath. And in any case, much of the time that something like that happens, you're going to notice if there's not true authority and confidence present, then it's not going to change the energy of the situation. It's not going to shift the social dynamic in a very substantial way. When this happens, the guy walks up and he just says a few quiet, calm words and totally reorients the entire team. It made me realize that that's what real authority is. It doesn't have to do with volume. It doesn't have to do with some body language trick or his posture or the way he held his head or the way he moved his chin or something silly like that. It was about his calm presence and the reflection of his true mastery of the environment and his mastery of himself in that moment that I think created the reflection and the reaction in the rest of the team. So let's get into why this works so well. If we think about the human brain, it still runs on software from 100,000 years ago. Your mind does not know the difference between you now and an older, more ancestral version of you. Your conscious brain does, right? Your prefrontal cortex, but the limbic system and the older areas of your brain do not understand that difference. if we think about why would that be so important to have this deference to authority, why would it be so important that we unconsciously follow someone who has true authority and confidence? Well, if we didn't, historically, our ancestors could have been killed. And so we would look to people who could be calm and could have clear direction under pressure, the still one in the storm. I always kind of picture the best metaphor in my mind is kind of picturing some monk sitting on top of a mountain in the middle of a huge storm, and he's just there meditating. So it's an ability to be calm and be present and be composed in the midst of chaos. And I think that's something that we've always looked to in others throughout history and throughout our ancestral development. So NCI teaches how we can achieve that authority and confidence through our behaviors and through changing the fabric of who we are as a person, not just these signals or the results of authority and confidence. And I think that's one of the big mistakes that most training you're going to see on the internet, or if you kind of search something up on YouTube, is going to be this focus on what are the symptoms of authority and confidence, not what are the root causations. So what is the systemic causation of that authority and confidence? And if it's something that you're interested in generating in yourself, then that's what you need to look at. You need to look at the systemic causes of that calmness, of that peace, of that composure, and of the ability to emanate true authority and confidence. So if we see someone who's got this true authority and confidence that they're able to present to others, they're going to have a real stillness in conflict in general. They're going to be unapologetic about their direction, right? If we see someone with true confidence about taking a direction, if they have true authority in themselves, they're not going to be asking questions or hedging bets or saying, well, maybe if, but do you think it would be okay? They're going to just be clear, unapologetic directions. And this doesn't mean that they're rude either, right? We don't have to be rude to be clear and directive at all. We could still be extremely polite. And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions about authority and confidence, again, is that, well, if I'm going to be very directive, that there is an inherent idea that that's somehow related to domineering behavior. So in order to be dominant in a situation, I want you to remember this, that you do not need to be domineering. And so what's another kind of sign or a symptom? Because we are just kind of talking about the symptoms, so you can get a good understanding of what this looks like. So another symptom we might see would be eye contact with presence in general. So someone with true authority and confidence is able to look other people in the eyes with a calm, caring energy, but without any fear, because they're not thinking about social judgment. They're not worried about how they're going to be perceived. They're able to lead with clarity because of their ability to be present, which ultimately reflects in calm, composed eye contact without flinching. And I think it might be useful too. Let's talk about things that people get wrong about authority and confidence. So I think a lot of people, when they look for the wrong symptoms of authority and confidence, these are kind of generate the opposite of authority. So if we think about wanting to generate this in other people, these things actually do the exact opposite. Think about someone who might just have a really loud voice or an overly tough posture, right? Maybe an overly raised chin, an overly raised back. These are not the things that generate authority and confidence. Those people underneath, deep down inside of themselves, are still seeking approval and they're fearing rejection. And the brain is really able to just instantly kind of pick up on that. So the big thing we're getting at here is that real authority isn't faked. It's trained into behavior. This isn't a fake it until you make it kind of thing. This is a thing that needs to be felt internally first. And that's what NCI really does differently, is it is able to train your nervous system, not your mouth and not your body language, behaviors, or gestures. Because we want these things to be a result of the systemic causation. Let's get into a couple quick details about how you can start applying this in your life today. And I think one of the most important things is to just consider our composure in every interaction in our life. When you have something come up in your life, which it invariably will, that might cause you to be stressed or might cause you to get frustrated, this isn't about repressing emotions or repressing anger. It's about an ability to remember the perspective of our life and remember to live with gratitude for the things that we have and have a more zoomed out perspective to where we're not going to get overly focused on the small consequences. We're able to recognize the inconsequentiality of this small system or this small situation that we find ourselves in. So, number one thing is to work on your composure in these situations. When you notice yourself getting a little bit frustrated, maybe someone cut you off in traffic or something, we can look at seeing that person as a reason, which is really just having a broader worldview of having empathy for the world and understanding for our small little place in this big, crazy universe. Another thing I want you to think about here is noticing your own flinches. So going back to this idea, when you start to see yourself coming out of composure, take note of that. Think about those times. Maybe write it down in your journal at the end of the day. The more that we can consciously bring our brain's awareness to these times when we're falling out of this state of confidence, we're falling out of this authority and confidence, is one of the best ways to start giving our mind control over it, because so many people just go through life getting angry and frustrated and falling out of composure and confidence without even being consciously aware that it's even happening. And if you can continue to work on this and this becomes your new baseline, you're going to stop chasing authority. You will start to become authority. And that's really the big difference here. And once you start to become authority, you start to become confident, people will just give you that compliance and that suggestibility automatically. It'll become an unconscious result. So I touched on a couple tiny details about how you can start improving your authority and confidence right now today. But if you want to, and if you're interested in it, we offer way more training in NCI University about how to break this down in all of the different aspects, both in the material kind of reductionist side of authority and confidence and in the more intangible and ethereal sides of authority and confidence. We have great and incredible training on it. If that's something that's interesting to you, please go ahead, check out our training. I really guarantee that you will not be disappointed by the depth of training that we have. And we have already transformed the authority and confidence of thousands of our students. And for me personally, it's one of the funnest things to watch change in other people. Teaching hard skills or behavioral tactics and this kind of thing are cool, but what defines your reality is who you are more than what you say or what you see. Who you are and who you become is what defines predominantly the world around you. So I'll leave you with that, and I hope to see you on the inside in NCI University. Take care.